What if you spend millions trying to modernize your ERP only to realize you didn't modernize anything? You just upgraded your software. A client came to me recently, proud of their ERP transformation. He showed me the deck that he presented to his CFO. It was all about the new SAP modules, mobile dashboards, and UI upgrades. And then he asked me, Noel, what do you think? Well, I told him the truth. This isn't modernization, it's a facelift. Your problems are still there, just harder to spot. It's like upgrading a dashboard on a car that uses petrol while calling it an EV. Do you think that's more efficient? Maybe. Modern? Not even close. Hi, I'm Noel Benjamin Dcosta. For the last 25 years, I've led large and small global ERP transformations in defense, retail, manufacturing, financial services, public sector, and family businesses, all across SAP, ServiceNow, and other technologies. You can read about my experience and references from my LinkedIn profile. The link is in the description. So I've seen companies pour millions of dollars into ERP upgrades that change nothing. And I've seen others that have unlocked millions in value with simple strategic moves. In this video, I'll walk you through the key differences between ERP upgrades and modernization, the model framework I use on every transformation, how SAP and ServiceNow fit into that model, where do you bring AI into this journey, and how do you avoid wasting money on the wrong strategy? One thing I will tell you, modernization isn't about what version of SAP you're on. It's about how work moves, how people engage, and how systems support outcomes. But first, you need to understand the difference between an ERP upgrade and ERP modernization. So, an ERP upgrade is about upgrading your existing modules to the latest version. This might also include adding new modules or cloud solutions, and most vendors normally tend to do that. You have to do this to be compliant with your ERP vendor's requirements. ERP modernization is about taking the best of the different solutions and making sure they work together in a seamless way. So, does ERP modernization only relate to SAP and ServiceNow? No. There are a lot of options, but in this video, we will only talk about SAP and ServiceNow, and we will look at other options in other videos. So I'm always asked, does this mean that we might have technical debt? If your goal is smoother workflows, better user experience, and faster execution, then yes, adding systems strategically makes sense. SAP is built for structure and control. It's your engine. It does that perfectly. But it's not built for flexibility, self-service, or experience. And that's where platforms like ServiceNow come in. The real technical debt isn't about having multiple systems. It's forcing one system to do everything badly. Integration today is easier than it's ever been. But disconnected workflows is one of the ways that it costs you your ROI. It creates errors and lost outcomes. So here's what we did with the client that I mentioned. We didn't throw out SAP. We didn't start a massive rebuild. We looked at where the pain actually was, which was onboarding, approvals, procurement delays, and support tickets stuck in email and crappy portals, and a lot of inconsistencies in the user experience. We rebuilt those processes around ServiceNow without touching what SAP was already doing well. This strategy worked perfect. They didn't need to spend money on customizations. They had a unified look in their portals and the workflows didn't break. But that's what ServiceNow does the best. So let's break down the model framework and hopefully it should help you to apply it in your own setup. If these are the types of videos that are important to you, gently hit the subscribe button and like this video. It helps me understand what content that I need to add that will help you and others who are facing the same challenges and opportunities. So step one in the model is map the problem. Don't even start with the technology, start with the pain you have. Too many projects that I work with start with, we are upgrading to S4HANA or we are rolling out new Fiori apps. But no one asks, where are we losing time? Where do handoffs break down? What's the process people bypass daily? So, if your HR team are spending 30% of their time responding to basic questions relating to leave balances, onboarding steps, benefits policies, then there is a problem to fix. The SAP data exists, but the access is buried, and the UX is definitely something to address. So, the solution is to map the problem. In the next few steps, we will identify where the core data sits and how to solve the UX in the workflows. By the way, the HR team don't need any more SAP training. So if you stay till the end of the video, we'll go through the model framework in its entirety, and we'll also understand how to apply it. So step 2 in the model is own the process. If no one owns it, no system will fix it. Most ERP projects are owned by IT or external consultants. But the people accountable for success are sitting inside finance, HR, and procurement. This is so common. I've seen mature organizations where the business takes ownership, and it's great to see how successful they are. If you're a business owner or a head of finance or procurement or HR, you need to own the system. You need to know what's configured. So imagine your procurement head was the process owner for pure approvals. Relying on customizations to create the workflow is a lot of money. If you had to introduce ServiceNow workflows, the procurement team can help define the workflow logic, the routing, and the escalation paths. Your adoption will soar because the tool will match your reality. Can you do it in SAP? Yes, but this is a customization, and every time you do an upgrade, you will have to redo the customization logic and coding. That's a lot of effort and time. Whereas with ServiceNow, you just need to connect with your SAP system, set up the workflow, and you are done. This is an important point for you because in SAP, you always want to keep your core clean. And what does that mean? The more customizations you add to your SAP core, the more you will have to pay to keep it running. In other words, your maintenance costs will go through the roof. So in this case, your business function, team leaders and leaders will have to take ownership around what gets implemented and how it works. And so for me, the key takeaway here is assign one process owner per stream. They don't have to be technical, they just need to be accountable. So the next step in the model is D, design the flow. Before you plug in any tools, define how the work should move. This is where ERP upgrades collapse. They mirror the broken process in a new user interface. Modernization means questioning everything. Do users really need 5 layers of approval? Why does finance have to re enter the data into the system? Can onboarding happen in parallel instead of linear steps? I love this example, and you will too. I once had a client who had 4 different onboarding processes across departments, one for core employees, the second for contractors, the third for middle layer managers, and the last one for the leadership. And you can imagine every time there was an upgrade in SAP, they had to redeploy the workflows, and invariably something broke in the process. We unified it into a single ServiceNow workflow that triggered tasks across SAP and other systems. It was a simple process, not as complicated as writing code. And so for me, the lesson here is design first and then digitize. The fourth step is E, enable with the right tools. One system can't do everything well. SAP is your system of record. It's great for structured data, for finance, for master data, for inventory and payroll, but SAP was not built for dynamic approvals, multi-step workflows, portals, and self-service. That's where ServiceNow comes in. It's built for workflow orchestration and a lot more. Approvals, notifications, visibility, knowledge, user experience. And so a recent customer I had met needed a better way to manage IT procurement. Instead of building everything inside SAP, we use ServiceNow for the intake, for the routing, the tracking requests, then push clean data into SAP for processing. The result was they had 40% faster approvals, less email, and a full audit trail. The final step is L, which is linking it to outcomes. If you can't measure what is improved, you didn't modernize. Forget about the technical KPIs. Focus on the business metrics: time to onboard, time to approve, errors prevented, admin hours saved. So, one finance team reduced manual invoicing by 60% with a ServiceNow plus SAP setup. They tracked the hours saved, not the AI accuracy and the workflow uptime. The modernization had to pay for itself fast, and it did. So, now let me show you how we applied this. So, in the first use case that I will talk about is basically an employee self service portal. So, one client was already running SAP Success Factors for HR. On paper, it had covered everything. So, you had leave management, you had policies, you had onboarding steps, payroll data. But in reality, HR was overwhelmed. Every week, the HR was handling the same repetitive tasks manually. Employees kept emailing for leave balances, asking where to find reimbursement forms, or what was the next onboarding step. The answers existed but were buried or disconnected. Success factors had the core data, but it wasn't designed for flexibility. Customizing it was slow, limited, and expensive, and everything required IT involvement. And even then, the experience fell short. It was functional, but not really accessible. We implemented ServiceNow as a self-service layer. The portal was clean, simple, and integrated directly with SAP and SuccessFactors. So now employees could check leave balances without waiting. Policy documents were centralized and easy to access. Onboarding steps were visible from day one and no follow-ups needed. And when human input was needed, tasks routed automatically. You don't need to go into your inbox and check for the email, it was all there. So after the launch, HR's manual workload dropped by around 60%. Routine questions stopped clogging their inbox. Employee satisfaction with HR interaction went up measurably. And HR had time to work on actual strategy, onboarding experience, and retention and compliance. So, success factor remained the system of record. ServiceNow became the system of interaction. And that combination worked great because each tool did what it was good at. So, let's look at use case number two. In this organization, purchase order approvals were a mess. Everything was handled over email. Buyers submitted POs manually, approvers responded on their own time, and there was zero visibility into who had seen what or where things were stuck. And the delays were constant. Approvals should have taken hours, but they got dragged into weeks. Procurement spent more time chasing status updates than negotiating with the vendors. SAP already was the system of record. The data was there, but SAP alone couldn't manage the workflow. So we introduced ServiceNow to manage the full approval process without changing SAP's core role. So the approvers received structured requests inside ServiceNow. The logic was built in: amount thresholds, business rules, escalation paths. The SAP PO data was pulled automatically. Nothing had to be re entered. And the status was visible to all stakeholders in real time. So, what was the outcome? So, cycle times dropped by 40% within the first month itself. Approvals moved faster with fewer errors. And procurement team got back hours each week. And because everything was tracked in one place, audit and compliance became effortless. SAP kept doing what it was meant to do: recording and processing. ServiceNow made the process flow efficiently from end to end. And that's what ERP modernization looks like in practice, not rebuilding it, just realignment. In use case number three, and this is pretty much my favorite, this client had a common onboarding problem. Too many disconnected steps spread across different teams. And this is so common across a lot of the clients that I work with. As soon as a new hire was confirmed, the chaos started. So HR sent the email to IT for laptop provisioning. Finance got a separate note for payroll setup. Facilities were looped in the last moment for ID cards and access. And each team ran on a separate thread There was no shared system, no visibility, and no ownership. And so you can imagine the delays were routine. IT missed provisioning deadlines. Payroll didn't have the complete details. Managers kept following up, and new hires started their very first week without the tools they needed. The SAP system had all the employee records, but it could not coordinate actions across departments. It wasn't built for cross functional workflows. We implemented a ServiceNow onboarding workflow that changed everything. So HR triggered the process once in ServiceNow. The tasks were instantly dispatched to IT, finance, and facilities, all in parallel and not sequential. And each action was tracked, and every owner was clear with what they had to do. SAP remained the system of record for employee data, but ServiceNow handled the movement. So no one waited for an email, nothing got missed, and everything moved in sync. Onboarding time dropped from 12 days to 5. Rework dropped to near zero, and new employees started day one with the right equipment, access, and payroll setup. Now, again, this is not a new system. It was simply a smarter way to use the systems they already had. SAP did what it was good at, and ServiceNow made it usable. That's the real difference between an upgrade and an actual modernization. So, what happens when you get this wrong? When companies treat ERP modernizations as just an SAP upgrade, the same problems stay exactly where they are. They're just harder to see. Of course, the screens look newer, the dashboards are flashier, but underneath, the processes are still broken. Teams go back right to using spreadsheets because workflows in SAP are still too rigid. Approvals continue to sit in inboxes, there's no tracking, there's no accountability, and no escalations. Manual workarounds resurface because users can't get what they need from the system. And IT once again takes the heat when the business doesn't see the results. The leadership thinks the system has improved, but for the people actually using it, nothing has changed. And that's the worst part. You spend millions, you've used the word modernization in every steering committee update, but in practice, the business is still running like it was 5 years ago. And that's not modernization. It's just rebranding legacy problems under a new interface. Without redesigning the process, assigning ownership, and using the right tools for the right layers, you're not modernizing. You're just hiding the inefficiencies better. So, how to fix it if you've already upgraded? If your ERP has been upgraded but nothing's improved operationally, you don't need to start over. You just need to realign how the building blocks work. So, here's how I would fix it. Focus on a value stream and not just on a function. So don't chase isolated problems. Look at one full value stream like procure to pay, or hire to retire, or order to cash. That's where real improvement happens. Identify pains within that work stream. Could be approvals dragging, handovers breaking, or manual steps everywhere. Once you see it as a workflow and not a silo, the right fix becomes obvious. In step two, map what belongs to SAP versus what belongs in ServiceNow. Now that you've got a clear value stream, split the responsibilities. So, SAP handles the core transactions, POs, employee records, invoices, financial entries, and ServiceNow handles the interaction around those approvals, task routing, exceptions, and self service. One thing I have to say in this video, we are only talking about ServiceNow at this point of time. And as I mentioned previously, you can have other tools that do the same thing. And we'll talk about these in other videos. So, continuing with step two, you stop forcing SAP to do the workflow logic. You stop building custom tools and isolations. You design the flow properly and let each platform do what it's good at. Step three is around assigning a process owner inside the business. So, ownership is non negotiable. Find someone who owns the outcome end to end, not a system, not a report, but the result. This means someone in procurement, in finance, and HR, and not IT or external consultants. Give them the authority to make calls and the responsibility to track what's working. Step 4 is all about measuring the impact where it matters. So skip the slides metrics, track what's real. Cycle times, manual touch points removed, approvals completed in workflows, exception routed automatically, fewer emails, fewer escalations. Tie it back to business performance and not technical success. This isn't about a workflow adoption. It's about whether procurement gets more done, whether HR moves faster, and whether finance closes quicker. So, fixing your ERP isn't about going wider, it's about going deeper, one value stream at a time. And that's how real modernization works. You show outcomes early and then you scale what works. So, if your ERP project doesn't change how people work, you didn't modernize, you just did a system upgrade. So for me, modernization is equal to real process change, clear accountability, and tools that support people and not slow them down. SAP has to be the engine in this scenario. ServiceNow is how you drive it. If you use both of these right, the ERP stops being a burden and starts becoming a competitive advantage. So, if you're in the middle of an ERP mess or you're planning a transformation, this channel is for you. Every week, I break down real world fixes for ERP, ServiceNow, and business transformation. I also talk about AI and several other solutions which are core to what your business looks like. If you like this video, please click the subscribe button below and give it a thumbs up. It helps me understand how I can help you make your systems better. I help businesses maximize the value of their system. Areas that I focus on are, help you define where AI fits and what problems it should solve, guide you through choosing the right tools, vendors, and platforms, helping rescue failed projects, uncovering the gaps in your workflow and data that block results, identification of high impact HR, finance, and procurement use cases that generate quick wins. And this is all from an outside in perspective. I also help teams understand how to trust the systems and use the tools so that the project doesn't end up being abandoned. And finally, find and fix leaks in your ERP and AI setup that quietly drain your money, time, and capacity. In the next video, I talk about a fact that 95% of all AI projects fail and how you can ensure that you fix it within your organization. You've already paid for all your systems. Now make them pay you back. So, hope this video added value to you, and I'll see you in the next one.